Like many people, my family has a tradition of watching It's a Wonderful Life around Christmas time every year. George Bailey desperately tries to leave town to pursue his big dreams, but repeatedly gets pulled back to Bedford Falls. One year I noticed a mini story that I had never noticed before, and I wanted to share it with you. Pay close attention to these clips and observe the contrast between the heartless monopolist and the altruistic socialist, and let's draw some lessons between these two expressions of humanity.
Son, just 30 short days. I'll dig up that 5,000 somehow.
Shut me up.
Pa?
Just
Have
a
you
minute.
put any real pressure on these people of yours to pay those mortgages?
Times are bad, Mr. Potter. A lot of these people are out of work.
Well, foreclosed. Are you running a business or a charity war?
Well, all I'm
Not with my money.
Mr. Potter, what makes you such a hard-skulled character? You have no family, no children. You can't begin to spend all the money you've got.
Oh, I suppose I should give it to miserable failures like you and that idiot brother of yours to spend for me.
This opening dialogue between Henry F. Potter and Peter Bailey encapsulates the two extremes honed within these characters that society still struggles with today. Potter represents heartless business without any charity, a caricature of capitalism. Potter is a monopolist who has politicians in his back pocket. Peter Bailey exemplifies big-hearted altruism without any financial sense, one who leverages the rich guy's money for a good cause. Redistributing the miser's money with a clear conscience to help those in need is the natural thing for a socialist-minded fellow like Peter. The extremes on both sides, played out within these characters, highlight the imbalances that emerge within humanity. The one follows the principles of math and finances perfectly at the expense of more meaningful endeavors in life, like family and charity. The other wholeheartedly follows the selfless care of others at all cost, maximizing meaning in life at the expense of business sense, ending time and again in jeopardy of falling into bankruptcy. $5,000 in today's money is the equivalent of over $80,000. It's a glaring example of financial ignorance, yet Potter is a mile too far in the other direction. Peter is right in pointing out the folly of his flawed financial fixation, but his son George Bailey finds a balance between these flawed extremes. When Peter Bailey dies of a stroke, George Bailey forgoes a trip to Europe to manage business in the wake of his father's passing. 3 months later, a board meeting is held at the Building and Loans to appoint a successor. The chairman dismisses George so he can finally go on his trip. Potter eagerly seizes the opportunity, making a motion to dissolve the institution. Many at the meeting are shocked and outraged. As George makes his way out of the room, Potter explains why he thinks the institution should be dissolved.
Peter Bailey was not a businessman. That's what killed him. Now, you take this loan here to Ernie Bishop. I happen to know the bank turned down this loan, but he comes here, and we're building him a house worth $5,000. Why?
Well, I handled that, Mr. Potter. I can personally vouch for his character.
Friend of yours.
Yes, sir.
You see, if you shoot pool with some employee here, you can come and borrow money.
Mr. Potter, just a minute. Now, you're right when you say my father was no businessman. I know that. Here, you're all businessmen here. Doesn't it make them better citizens? Doesn't it make them better customers? Do you know how long it takes a working man to save $5,000? Just remember this, Mr. Potter, that this rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living and dying in this community. Well, is it too much to have them work and pay and live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath? Anyway, my father didn't think so.
George understands that putting a little faith behind people can give them the confidence they need to become better than they were. Potter doesn't put faith in people. Potter puts faith in the numbers. The people have to prove themselves first before he sends 1 cent their way. Perhaps Potter learned this lesson from George's father, who failed to repay the money he had borrowed over and over again. After George delivers the last of his appeal to keep the building and loans open, he finally leaves the room, slamming the door behind him.
Sentimental hogwash.
The
I
meeting
want
then
my
descends
motion.
into a chaos of argument. In the end, they vote to keep the business open on one condition: that George Bailey stays and runs it. The building and loan is the last thing Potter can't fully control in his town, and it bothers him. George becomes the one guy standing in Potter's way, but it comes at a cost to him. George has to postpone his dreams again and again, and ultimately sacrifice them completely in order to save the town from Potter's strict, heartless control. George's dreams are postponed upon his father's death. They're postponed again so his brother can go to college for 4 years. Again, just before he goes on his honeymoon, when Potter concocts a mischievous plan to cause a run on the bank with a rumor he himself fabricates. Another example of Potter's poor, premature timing. George runs back to the old billing and loan, saving its permanent close with all but $2 of the money for his honeymoon. George's dreams to build skyscrapers and travel the world slowly suffocate until the hope of them dies a quiet whisper of the past. Although he never realizes his worldwide ambition, he pours his efforts and talents into building his late father's business. It thrives, becoming a much superior alternative to Potter's slums. The movie shows a scene where the pharmacist that George used to work for as a child was breaking ground on his new home. Several people were there to celebrate. The movie cuts over to Potter. Potter's rent collector points out all the new developments, showing that 90% of the new tenants, suckers as he calls them, used to pay rent to Potter.
Look, Mr. Potter, it's no skin off my nose. I'm just your little rent collector. But you can't laugh off this Bailey Park anymore. Look at it today. Dozens of the prettiest little homes you ever saw. 90% owned by suckers who used to pay rent to you.
Even though they know the Baileys never made a dime out of it.
You know very well why. The Baileys were all chumps. Every one of these homes is worth twice what it cost a building and loan to build.
George is winning because he maximized demand by reducing profit margin without violating financial principles. He took a minimal salary and poured all the money back into helping people get into new homes. This is what business with a heart looks like. There was a lot of room for profit margin, but that would limit the amount of people who could afford to live in the homes. I personally wouldn't go all the way to no profit like George did. I would find somewhere in the middle and maximize my own salary. But George is a lot like his father, not really helping himself all that much.
Bailey family's been a boil on my neck long enough.
His now wealthy friend coming into town reminded him of all the money and freedom he could have had. Practically living George's dream, yet George can't even leave town for a brief Florida vacation. Despite his success in town over Potter, it still bothers him deep down inside that he gave up his own dreams. Potter is brewing a scheme.
Quite a cigar, Mr. Potter.
You like it? I'll send you a box. George, I am an old man, and most people hate me, but I don't like them either, so that makes it all even. You know just as well as I do that I run practically everything in this town, but the Bailey building alone. In fact, you have beaten me, George, and as anyone in this county can tell you, that takes some doing. I have stated my side very frankly. Now let's look at your side. George Bailey is not a common, ordinary yokel. He is an intelligent, smart, ambitious young man who hates the building and loan almost as much as I do. A young man who's been dying to get out on his own ever since he was born. Trapped into frittering his life away, playing nursemaid to a lot of garlic eaters. Do I paint a correct picture, or do I exaggerate?
Potter has George pegged. He knows exactly what's going on and decides to play into George's ambitious side. George avoids answering and responds.
Well, what's your point, Mr. Potter?
My point is I want to hire you.
Hire me?
I want you to manage my affairs. George, I'll start you out at $20,000 a year.
Potter offers a salary nearly 10 times what George was making. In today's money, it would be the equivalent of over $300,000 a year in a 3-year contract. George is shocked and can't believe his potential fortune, but asks,
How about the building and loan?
Oh, confound it, man. Are you afraid of success? I'm offering you a 3-year contract at $20,000 a year starting today. Is it a deal or isn't it?
Well, Mr. Potter, I know I ought to jump at the chance, but I wonder if it'd be possible for you to give me 24 hours to think it over.
Sure. You go on home and talk about it to your wife.
I'd like to do that.
Yeah, then in the meantime, I'll draw up the papers.
All right, sir.
Okay, George?
Okay, Mr. Potter.
Potter's sweaty palm revealed his cards and woke George up. George realizes that he almost fell for Potter's plot to shut down the building and loans and becomes utterly disgusted with himself. George seizes the opportunity to make clear to Potter that George doesn't need him in any way. George never does borrow 1 penny from Potter. Burning the last and only bridge between the two, he ensures a point of no return. Yet the day will come when he does return, a day when it becomes clear that there is only one man who can save him from utter ruin.
8,000.
Good morning, Mr. Potter. What's the news? You just can't keep those Baileys down. Now, can you, Mr. Potter? Not every heel was in Germany and Japan.
You forgot something.
What?
Well, aren't you going to make a deposit?
Oh, sure I am.
Well, then it's usually customary to bring the money with you.
Huh? Oh, shucks.
How about that finger there?
Anyway.
Bailey. Take me back there. Hurry up.
A missing $8,000 in today's money would be a whopping $130,000. Even though George did right in the financial realm, and even more valiantly with the people he helped, he left absolutely no room for this kind of error. To make matters worse, the bank examiner was there waiting to inspect the books. George tries to help Billy remember every step he took, traipsing through the snow downtown. In a last desperate attempt to jog some memory, George asks Billy a few more questions at the office. An exhausted Uncle Billy responds.
Maybe. I don't want any maybe. We've got to find that money.
I'm no good to you.
Uncle Billy, look, do you realize what's going to happen if we don't find it?
Uncle Billy was indeed a very simple man with limited competence. George kept him anyway, entrusting him to deposit enough money to pay cash for an entire house. But his patience was expended.
Think.
I can't think anymore, George. I can't think anymore. It hurts.
Where's that money, you silly, stupid old fool? Where's that money? You realize what this means? It means bankruptcy and scandal and prison. That's what it means. One of us is going to jail. Well, it's not going to be me.
The words of Potter from the beginning of this story sail out of George's mouth. It wasn't enough that he sacrificed his dreams on the altar of altruism, watching them slowly choke to death while some of his friends callously rubbed it in his face. It wasn't enough that while his business was successful, he poured all the money back into helping people while maintaining a meager income, when he could have easily enriched himself. On the grave of his cold, dead dreams, his life was rapidly turning into a nightmare. George sees his end very clearly, and the way out is closing fast. There's only one man who can save him now, and it's the one man he hates with all of his being. But George swallows his pride and crawls into Potter's office.
Please help me, Mr. Potter. Help me, won't you, please? Can't you see what it means to my family? I'll pay any sort of a bonus on the loan, any interest. If you still want the building and loan,
George, could it possibly be there's a slight discrepancy in the books?
No, sir, there's nothing wrong with the books. I've just misplaced $8,000. I can't find it anywhere.
You misplaced $8,000.
Yes, sir.
Potter finds himself in just the position he's always wanted to be in. Gloating, he responds,
I've suddenly become quite important.
George already offered the building and loans on a silver platter, but Potter isn't going to settle for that now. He's got George over a barrel, and he's going to dunk him hard.
Look at you. You used to be so cocky. You were going to go out and conquer the world. You once called me a warped, frustrated old man. What are you with a warped, frustrated young man? Miserable little clerk crawling in here on your hands and knees and begging for help. You're worth more dead than alive. I'm going to swear out a warrant for your arrest. Misappropriation of funds, manipulation, malfeasance. All right, George. Go ahead. Go ahead. You can't hide in a little town like this.
George sees only one way out now. He spirals into despondency, visiting the bar and drinking himself into oblivion. He then drives drunk and runs his car into a tree. Staggering down the street, he's nearly hit by a truck. He stumbles onto a bridge and prepares himself to end it all. Meanwhile, the town is abuzz, raising money for George upon hearing the rumor of what happened. George does, in fact, have equity that no accountant can record, no books can reflect, and no vault can hold. It opens a door that can't be closed, a door of gratitude, a door of reciprocity. His selfless sacrifice has been accumulating compounding interest, dividends, and equity in ways neither George nor Potter realized. He is sustained by the fruits of his labor, from the sprouts he had nurtured, from the seeds he had sown. The echoes of his generosity over a lifetime reverberate back to him in a way neither his selflessness nor Potter's selfishness could anticipate. Patreon after grateful Patreon dumped piles of money they had saved over the years on a table in George's house. George Bailey's nightmare of bankruptcy and incarceration is fully dissolved into a vat of wealth he unwittingly accumulated. A fortune of wealth built by the brilliant balance of a heart with a brain. That Merry Christmas, have a Happy New Year, like and subscribe, and come see me in my next video.